The evening light in Eden is gold. The kind of gold you only see in a world that has not yet been broken. A man and a woman crouch behind a row of fig trees. Their hands are shaking. The leaves they have stitched together are still wet from the sap. And then they hear it. Footsteps, soft even, coming through the garden the way they have always come at the same hour, on the same path, with the same unhurried rhythm. You can almost see Adam's chest moving too fast. You can almost feel what he feels, because that sound is not new to him. He has walked beside it. He has laughed beside it. He knows exactly who is making it. This is the first time he has ever hidden from it. The footsteps stop. A voice not angry, not loud, asks one question. Where are you? You need to remember that voice, because you are going to hear it again. You are going to hear it on a hillside under the oaks of Mamre, eating bread with a 100-year-old man. You are going to hear it in the dark, beside a river called Jabbok, where a tired man is about to wrestle until dawn. You are going to hear it in a bush that burns and will not burn up. You are going to hear it inside a furnace 7 times hotter than it should be. And one day, in a feeding trough, in a town called Bethlehem, the one making that voice will open his eyes for the first time as a baby. We will get to that face. But not yet. This is not a story about angels. This is not a story about visions. This is not a story about prophets who saw a flash of light and lived to tell it. This is a story about every time the Son of God stepped out of eternity, took on a shape, and walked among people who did not yet know his name. Around the year 160, a man named Justin lived in Rome. He had been a Greek philosopher before he became a Christian, and he was eventually beheaded for refusing to burn incense to the emperor. Before he died, he wrote down a long conversation with a Jewish friend named Trypho, and in it, he said something the early church believed without controversy. He said the one who walked in Eden, the one who ate bread with Abraham, the one who wrestled Jacob in the dark was the Son, Christ, before he had a body. Here is what most people miss, the Hebrew verb in Genesis, chapter 3. When it says God walked in the garden, is the word halak. Halak does not mean arrival. Halak means habit. He had been coming every evening for a long time. He did not show up that day to judge. He showed up to walk, like always, and that is the saddest sentence in the Bible. Stay with that picture for a second. You need to see what is happening here. The God of the universe is standing in a garden he made, calling for a friend he loves, and the friend will not come out. That word halak I just mentioned, it is used 4 other times in the Old Testament with the same shape. Enoch walked with God. Noah walked with God. Abraham was told to walk before God. It is not the verb you use for a king arriving in a chariot. It is the verb you use for 2 people who go for a stroll in the evening because they like each other. That is what was lost in Genesis. Chapter 3. Not paradise, not perfection, the walk. And what makes that scene break me every single time is this. He still came. He could have stayed in heaven that night. He could have sent a flaming sword and a notice of eviction and skipped the conversation entirely. But the very first thing God does after sin enters the world, the very first thing is keep the appointment. You can almost see him stopping just for a second, listening, knowing already. And here is the part that breaks me. Listen for what he calls Adam. He calls him by name first. Before the curse, before the consequence, before anything else. He wants to know where his friend is. He wants to know where you are. A few thousand years pass on the page. A few chapters in the book, we meet a man named Abraham. He is 99 years old. 3 days earlier, in obedience to a covenant, he had circumcised himself. He is sitting at the door of his tent in the heat of the day, recovering, exhausted, watching the road, and 3 travelers appear. Picture him in your head. You need to understand what happens next, because the Hebrew text does something strange. It opens the chapter by saying, and the Lord appeared to him by the oaks of Mamre. Then, in the next sentence, Abraham looks up and sees three men. The text does not explain. It just calls one of them the Lord and lets you sit with it. Abraham runs at 99. 3 days post-surgery, he runs. He bows to the ground. He begs them to stay. He calls Sarah out of the tent and tells her quick 3 measures of fine flour. Knead it. Bake bread. Now he kills the best calf. He brings curds and milk, and then he stands under the tree while they eat. God ate. Read that line again, because most people skim past it. The infinite, uncreated, self-existent God of the universe, the one who fills the heavens, who holds the stars in place, who needs nothing from anyone, sat under a tree in the Judean foothills and ate bread baked by a 90-year-old woman. You can almost taste the bread he ate, and while he chewed, he said the line that changed history. At this time next year, Sarah shall have a son. Sarah laughed from behind the tent flap, a bitter, tired 90-year-old laugh, and the visitor heard it, and he turned and he asked, gently, why did Sarah laugh? You can hear the smile in that sentence. He is not offended. He is patient. He is the kind of God who lets a tired woman laugh at his promise and then keeps it anyway. If you have ever laughed at one of God's promises, you have company. Now watch what happens next. 2 of the travelers stand up. They walk towards Sodom to do what needs to be done there. The third stays behind, and the text calls him, plainly and without apology, Yahweh. 1 more generation passes. Pay attention. This next scene might be the strangest in the Old Testament. A man named Jacob is alone on the wrong side of a river called the Jabbok. It is night. Tomorrow he meets his brother Esau, who has waited 20 years to kill him. Jacob has sent his wives and children and herds and servants across the water. He has sent his prayers up. He has done everything a desperate man can do. And now he is alone in the dark, and a man comes out of the dark. Pay attention to that word. The Bible does not say an angel came. The Bible does not say a vision came. The Bible says a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. And here is where the story stops making sense. Jacob is winning. The man cannot get the upper hand. Through the third watch of the night, into the gray hours before dawn, the 2 of them are locked in a wrestling match. Jacob is somehow not losing. You can almost hear the breathing. So the man touches him, just touches him on the socket of his hip, and the hip comes out of joint in an instant. And do you know what Jacob does? He still will not let go. He hangs on, limping, wrecked, sobbing. The prophet Hosea will say later, and he gasps the most desperate sentence in the Old Testament. I will not let you go unless you bless me. If you have ever held on to God past the point of strength, you know what this is. And he blesses him. He gives him a new name, Israel, he who strives with God. When the sun comes up, Jacob is alone again. He names that place Peniel, which in Hebrew means the face of God. And the reason is one sentence that should stop your reading right where it is. For I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered. He saw a face. He lived. And for the next 2,000 years, every rabbi who read that verse had to wrestle with it, the way Jacob wrestled with the man, because the same Bible in another chapter will quote God himself saying, "You cannot see my face and live." Both are true. Both are in the same book, and nobody is sure how. Stop for a second. Look at what is happening in this video. 3 scenes, 3 settings, 3 different centuries on the timeline, a garden, a tent, a river in the dark, and the same person walking through every one of them. He is the one who came in the evening to the man who would not come out. He is the one who sat under a tree and ate bread baked by a tired old woman. He is the one who wrestled until dawn with a runaway and then would not stop blessing him. And we have not even gotten to the fire yet. If your Bible is starting to open up, If you are starting to see a face you have always read past, there are stories in the second half of this video I almost did not include because they are too strange to be invented and too specific to be coincidence. Hit subscribe before you forget, because what is coming next is the part that should have been in every Sunday school class, and somehow, almost nobody told you. Hundreds of years have passed since Jacob limped away from the Jabbok. His descendants are now slaves in Egypt. They have been slaves for 400 years. The God who walked in Eden has been, by all human appearances, completely silent. And on the backside of a desert nobody ever goes to, an 80-year-old shepherd notices something off the trail. A bush is on fire. Put yourself there. Now bushes catch fire all the time in the desert. That is not the miracle. Read the verse slowly. The bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. That detail matters. You can light a bush. Anyone can. Only one person can fill a bush with fire that does not eat it. Moses turns aside to look, and the moment he turns, the moment he steps off the path, a voice calls his name twice. Moses, Moses. He answers the way every man in the Bible answers when God says his name. Here I am, the voice says. Take off your sandals. The ground you are standing on is holy. Look at what the text is actually saying about who is speaking. It says in verse 2, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire. Then in verse 4, that same speaker calls himself by the most famous name in the universe. I am that I am. You may have read this story since childhood and missed it. In Hebrew, that phrase, angel of the Lord, is Malach Yahweh, messenger of the Lord. But every time Malach Yahweh shows up in the Old Testament, the messenger does not speak for God. He speaks as God. He receives worship. He forgives sin. He pronounces blessing on his own authority. If you have ever wondered why God did not just speak from a cloud, this is your answer. He came in person. And this is exactly what Justin Martyr was trying to tell his Jewish friend Trypho in the year 160. The messenger was not a created angel. The messenger was the Son, pre-flesh, pre-Bethlehem, standing in fire, speaking from fire, refusing to let the fire end the bush, because the bush that day was Israel itself. 40 years later, Moses is dead. The slaves have grown old in the wilderness and died, and a new generation is camped on the wrong side of the Jordan, looking up at the walls of Jericho. Their new leader is a soldier named Joshua. And the night before the most famous siege in human history, Joshua does something nobody tells you about. You probably never thought about. That he goes for a walk, alone outside the camp, past the sentries, into the dark, and in the dark a man is waiting for him, with a drawn sword. Picture it. You are Joshua. Alone. A blade you did not bring is glinting in the moonlight, 20 feet in front of you. He does not run. He challenges the figure with the only question a commander knows how to ask. Are you for us or for our enemies? The man does not answer either side. He says, neither. I am the commander of the army of the Lord. Now I have come, and Joshua falls on his face, and you would have done the same. This is the part nobody tells you in Sunday school. Joshua worships him. He bows down. He calls him Lord. And the man with the sword accepts the worship. Now hold that in your head, because in the very last chapter of the Bible, in Revelation 22, the Apostle John tries to do exactly what Joshua just did. He falls down to worship an angel, and the angel jerks him to his feet and says, do not do that. Worship God. Every angel in Scripture refuses worship. Every created being refuses worship. There is exactly one category of being in the Bible who receives worship without correcting it, and the captain of the army of the Lord, the night before Jericho, received it without flinching. By now you may be doing the math. If Jacob saw God face to face and lived, and if Joshua bowed to a man and worshipped him, how does that fit with the verse you have heard your whole life? The one where God himself says, In Exodus 33, you cannot see my face, for man shall not see me and live. Both are in the same Bible. Both are spoken by the same God, and for 2,000 years the church has wrestled with the paradox. The Gospel of John, in chapter 1, gives the answer in one sentence. Listen carefully. No one has ever seen God. The only God who is at the Father's side, he has made him known. Read that twice. No one has ever seen God. And then immediately the only God has made him known. You are not reading a contradiction. You are reading a clue. The face Jacob wrestled was not the face of the Father. The man with the sword outside Jericho was not the face of the Father. The visitor under the oaks was not the face of the Father. They were the face of the Son. Before the Son had a face the way you and I have a face. They were Christ, wearing a temporary shape. Christ borrowing a body for the length of a conversation, and then returning to the Father. And one day, he will not borrow a body anymore. One day, he will take one from a teenage girl in Nazareth, permanently. But that is the resolution. We are still in the build. There is one more scene first, and it is the strangest one in the Old Testament. It is the one that broke a pagan king's mind so completely that he wrote about it in his own royal record, in Aramaic, in his own handwriting. So stay with me, because we are about to walk into a furnace. Babylon, 600 years before Christ, a king named Nebuchadnezzar has built a statue of solid gold 90 feet tall on the plain of Dura. The decree is simple. When the music plays, every man bows. Anyone who does not bow goes into a furnace. The music plays. A whole empire drops to its knees. 3 young men do not. Their Hebrew names are Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. You probably know them by the names a Babylonian official gave them: Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They are teenagers. They are exiles. They are 1,000 miles from home. And they are the only 3 people on that whole plain still standing up. The king is enraged. He gives them one more chance: bow or burn, and they give him the bravest sentence in the Old Testament: our God is able to deliver us, but if not, we still will not bow. You need to feel the weight of those last 3 words. But if not, they were not bargaining. They were not bluffing. They had decided that the worst thing God could allow was still better than the best thing he could prevent. The king orders the furnace heated, 7 times hotter than usual. The men carrying them die from the heat before they can step back. The 3 teenagers fall, tied, into the fire, and then Nebuchadnezzar leaps to his feet. You need to hear his words slowly. It is one of the most stunning sentences in the whole Old Testament, and it is spoken by a pagan king. Did we not throw 3 men bound into the fire? But I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and the appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods. The Aramaic phrase he uses is Bar Elohim, a son of God. You can see the king on his throne, a pagan king, with no theological training, with no covenant, with no Bible, is the first person in the entire Bible to call him by what would become his most famous title. How did he know? He had never read Genesis. He had never heard of Mamre or Peniel. You have to ask yourself what he was actually seeing. He saw what you have been reading about for the last 20 minutes. He saw the face. And here is the answer to the question you have been carrying since the opening of this video. Stop on this. The face Adam saw in the cool of the day was the face not yet wearing flesh. The face Jacob wrestled in the dark by the river was the face not yet wearing flesh. The face Moses begged to see and was told no was the face not yet wearing flesh, because flesh was still coming. And one day, in a stable in a town called Bethlehem, that face, for the first time in eternity, would open its eyes wearing skin. That is why Mary could hold him. That is why John could lean against his chest at supper. That is why Thomas could put a finger in the scar. The God who could not be seen and lived had taken on a face that could be touched and held and loved by his own creation. The visitor finally moved in, and one day, on a small black volcanic rock in the Aegean Sea called Patmos, an old exiled apostle named John, the same John who had leaned against his chest at supper, will see him one more time. But this time the flesh is glorified. This time the eyes are like flames of fire. This time the robe is dipped in blood, and a sword comes from his mouth. And on his thigh is written a name nobody has ever read out loud. King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He is the same person who walked in the garden. He is the same person who ate under the oaks. He is the same person who stood in the furnace. He just is not visiting anymore. And one day you will see him too. Fast forward 1,500 years. A garden behind a friend's house in Milan, Italy. The year is 386. A 31-year-old man named Augustine has just collapsed under a fig tree. He has spent his entire adult life chasing wisdom in philosophy, in pleasure, in politics, in every direction except the one in front of him, and he is exhausted. You may be sitting where Augustine sat exhausted. Searching late, he hears a child's voice from over the garden wall. The child is singing two Latin words. Tal, ledge, take up and read. He picks up the letter of Paul to the Romans. He reads one sentence, and he meets, for the first time, the one who has been waiting beside him the whole time. Years later, he writes a line that has been quoted for 1,600 years. Late have I loved thee, O beauty so ancient and so new. Late have I loved thee, for behold, thou wert within me, and I, outside, and there I searched for thee. Stop on that line. Augustine in his garden finally saw what Adam had once seen in his the same presence. Already there, already close. Augustine had spent his whole life searching the world for a face that had been beside him from the day he was born. That is the part that should stop you in your tracks, because the same face is beside you right now. 3 things before you go. The God of the Old Testament and the God of the New Testament are not 2 different persons. They are not 2 different temperaments wearing one name. They are the same face. He was always merciful. He was always pursuing. He was walking in the cool of the day before there was a cross. He was eating bread under a tree before there was a manger. He was standing in a furnace before there was a tomb. The Christ you meet in the Gospels is not a softer version of someone harder. He is the same person walking the same way he has been walking since Eden. This one is for you. If you have ever opened the Old Testament and thought it sounded like a different God, a louder God, a colder God, a God you did not recognize, you were reading it without the face. Put the face back in. Read it again. Watch every story turn into Christ. Read Genesis chapter 3 and listen for the footsteps. Read Genesis 18 and watch him eat. Read Genesis 32 and feel Jacob. Hang on. Read Daniel 3 and look for the 4th man. He is on every page. He always was. And the 3rd one is the one I cannot stop thinking about. Every Christophany in the Old Testament was a visit. He came, he stayed for a while, he left. Eden, Mamre, Peniel, the bush, the sword outside Jericho, the fire in Babylon, he always left. Until Bethlehem. Bethlehem is the Christophany that never ended. He came, he stayed. He is staying. He is staying right now while you sit wherever you are sitting, watching this video, hearing these words. He is here. The same face Adam saw, the same face Jacob touched, the same face Nebuchadnezzar named, and one day he will not arrive in a feeding trough. He will arrive on a white horse, and the visit will be over forever because the staying will be forever. So tell me below, which Christophany hit you the hardest, Eden, Mamre, Peniel, the burning bush, or the furnace? I read every comment, and I want to know which face you saw first. He was always here. He is here now. He is not going anywhere. Amen.